welcome to a brand new episode of Coming Distractions brought to you by the Nerdpocalypse podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Okay, guys, let's talk about The 355. First movie of 2022 that we're reviewing. Let me give you the log line here, which is the CIA agent named Mason Brown, aka Mace, joins forces with a rival German agent, a cutting-edge computer specialist, and a Colombian psychologist when a top-secret weapon falls into the hands of a group of mercenaries. Together, the four women embark on a breakneck mission to save the world while staying one step ahead of a mysterious figure who's tracking them. This one's starring Jessica Chastain, Lupita Nyong'o, Penélope Cruz, Diane Kruger, Bingbing, and Sebastian Stan. So let's break down the film, and then I'll sort of give my overarching views of it. So as far as story goes, story and writing, the movie has a very basic plot. That synopsis is pretty much all that's going on. There is a tech MacGuffin that they need to get, which is rather silly in that it's a device that can hack into anything and like make the world a playground for terrorists, right? It's like it can hack into planes or phones or banks or the stock market or whatever. And this device ends up in the hands of this guy who's like, oh, this is like really bad. I should probably turn this into like the CIA or something. And then all these other agencies are after it as well. And that's how these sort of four women come together. One from the US, one from Germany, one from Britain, and a psychologist from Colombia. So that's the generic story. And it is pretty generic. It's fine. Like the writing is fine. It never gets too slick for its own good. It never does anything particularly exciting. And it's never necessarily bad. It's just totally fine writing. Again, if you're here for that sort of by the playbook sort of story, then it's serviceable. The sort of twists and turns of the story are also, in my opinion, you could see coming about a mile away. But again, they're all fine. So if I had, any negative things to say, I would say it's just incredibly predictable, how everything kind of turns out. Let's talk about acting and performances. Look, Jessica Chastain, Lupita Nyong'o, Diane Kruger, and Penélope Cruz are your main, stalwarts of the movie. They all carry their roles, as you'd expect. Jessica Chastain, because it's a very American-centric story, is the lead, and Jessica Chastain delivers as she always does. I think she's certainly been better in other things that have given her a lot more sort of meat on the bones, like Zero Dark 30, for instance. I certainly wouldn't put these two movies in the same category at all. And Lupita Nyong'o, Oscar award winner, does a completely serviceable job for what she's given. Diane Kruger is like this German counterpart to Jessica Chastain's American, is fine. I don't feel like she's given a lot to do. They sort of allude to her background being a little bit more interesting, but they never really kind of dig into it all that much. So there's not a lot of sort of emotional pulling that goes on with her character, or much emotional pulling of any of the characters. Probably the most we get is a scene with Lupita Nyong'o later on in the film, like something sort of very emotional happens, and she's able to pull something, but that's about it. We're supposed to feel like Jessica Chastain's character has this sort of deeper connection with someone else in the movie. I never really felt that way. It felt very, very surface to me. As far as the score and music, it's largely like ineffective. It doesn't really build any suspense. There's a couple of moments in like some action sequences. They sort of play this music that's very reminiscent of that sort of chase scene in Mission Impossible 7, I believe, which I was a big fan of. So it kind of gives that feel, but the action sequences aren't enough to connect with the music, if that makes sense, right? And it's not that the music is overpowering those scenes. It's just like, it's just kind of lacking. And then, sort of lastly, the fight scenes in the movie, these are women fighting, mostly men or each other. There's a lot of cutting in the initial fight scenes. Later on in the movie, it feels like they were like, oh yeah, we should probably not do that. People kind of really hate that now in the sort of era of John Wick, where these long single shots of action. And they kind of calmed that down. But in the beginning, it was like, oh, this is like a Liam Neeson movie. Like, he clearly can't jump that fence, so let's do it in 15 takes, right? But they kind of calm that down as the movie progresses. But again, it's largely fine. It's not as brutal as you would imagine. There's a weird thing in this movie where they're supposed to be spies, but there's a lot of like out in the open shooting, like, oh, we're in Paris, let's just start firing off guns at each other in the middle of the Parisian streets. Not exactly spy work. So there are some kind of funny moments where it's like, dude, you don't have to do that. Like, that's a bit odd. And even some of the characters are like, you're supposed to be kind of a spy. Like, maybe let's be a little bit more clandestine. And they're like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, I forgot that we shouldn't just be firing pistols off in the middle of a crowd. So that sort of, the fight scenes they're okay. They're not bad. They don't feel like silly, but they're okay. Like, you're not getting any like John Wick style or Atomic Blonde style fight scenes, but they're fine. So overall, if you can't already tell, my thoughts on the movie is, it's fine. It's fine. It's a 2.5 out of 5. If ever there was one, this is a perfect folding laundry sort of popcorn movie. You're not going to be too upset that you saw it. You're not going to be too excited that you did. I think you could probably wait to streaming, honestly. It just doesn't feel like a movie to risk going to the theater to see in this environment. It's fine. I don't have a problem with it. They sort of allude to their relationship sort of still existing by the end of this movie. So I think if it does moderately well, I think you could see a sequel. I wouldn't be mad at a sequel. I certainly wouldn't rush out to see one. So 2.5 out of 5 for the 355, and we will see you guys next time.